Hi everyone, welcome to another Family Matters, and shock horror, I am actually interviewing someone from New Zealand. I am staying in New Zealand for a change. As you'll know, over recent weeks and months, we've been all over the globe, but I'm really excited to be talking today to actually a new, I would say, breaking or cut-edge civil liberties organisation called Pillar New Zealand. And so very excited to actually introduce, when I find the right button, to introduce someone who will not be completely unfamiliar to the Family First crew. It's Nathan Seiuli. Nathan, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Simon. Great to be here.
Look, you're a familiar face for many reasons, including, of course, you are one of our wonderful panelists on Straight Talk on a Monday night. And, of course, you've been involved with a number of organisations, but now you're leading something called Pillar New Zealand. And look, I think a lot of viewers won't necessarily have heard because simply it's only just been organised. And the main thing I know is Pillar is actually quite a nice double entendre. It's an acronym. So tell us about Pillar. What's this all about?
Yeah, well, you're very kind, first of all. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank
you.
For
the kind introduction. I need to get my wife to watch that, get a bit of respect around here. So Pillar is a new civil liberties organisation that me and a small team launched in September. It is, like you say, a double entendre. It speaks to restoring the pillars of democracy. We really believe in democracy at Pillar, but it's also an acronym for protecting individual life, liberty, and rights. So, yeah, some of you may recognise me from things like Straight Talk, but you may also recognise me from the Free Speech Union, where I spent close to 3 years working in that space. And effectively, I came to the point where I realised that yes, speech is under threat and defending it is really important, but there's also a broad sort of scope of issues that I wasn't able to engage in, that I wasn't able to advocate for. And the success that we'd had at FSU, I really saw being applicable and probably beneficial in these other arguments as well. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to step out on my own or with a small team independently and pursue change in more than just the speech area. And it's been fun. Been definitely a steep learning curve, but we're having a lot of fun doing it, and we're really hopeful for the future of Pillar and for the country.
Well, I do love the name. People who follow me, be it the podcast or the live shows, know I enjoy a good pun or a double entendre or a play on words. I mean, it's a small point, but I mean, who came up with it? Was this, hours and hours of talking around the table, or did someone throw something into Grok or Chat GPT? How did you come up with it?
No, we'd been having a lot of conversations as a team in my previous role around what are we trying to achieve? What are we trying to do? And this theme of restoring the foundations kept coming up and up. And sort of from there fed into this idea of restoring the pillars of democracy. To be honest as well, I had about a month off on parental leave. My wife and I, we just welcomed our third son. And after the 2 days we spent in hospital, I got home and I thought, what am I going to do for 28 days? Not exactly sure. So that's where I sort of got left with a bit of time with the seed of an idea. The acronym came second. Initially, we were only using one L. We were talking a lot about liberty. And then someone, I think actually Bob might have brought it to my attention and talked about, well, what about life? And there's a real tension in there advocating for life and liberty. It can sometimes seem like there's a contradiction in some of these arguments, but we really want to walk into these conversations and enter into these discussions while balancing the tension of how do we protect individual life, vulnerable life, while also balancing individual liberty. I think it's discussions and decisions that need to be had and made that haven't necessarily been done yet.
Well, Bob now will want a royalty for that L, but we can discuss that later and offline. But no, jokes aside, I mean, I would make the quick observation, actually, that life and liberty actually go together. Life gets messy, as your life, my life, everyone's clashes, and we have our demands. But actually, there's no freedom without life. It's one of the most key things. So I love the fact that you've got the two L's there. And by the way, congratulations on number 3. I'm amazed you're awake.
Thank you. Oh, look, honestly, people keep saying, how's the sleep going? I get 8 hours every night, I'm not going to lie. But my wife might have a different answer to that question. So I'll let her speak for herself later on.
Well, it was something, even though I've got 5 step-kids, Nathan, the youngest was 6 when I popped along, which was, coincidence, but it could also have been good planning to miss those early years.
Very good timing.
So as you say, you obviously have been involved with the Free Speech Union, which, by and large does a good job, but quite obviously a singular focus. So it sounds to me from what you've just described with Pillar that you are trying to look for across a much broader array of rights that are all interconnected.
Oh, 100%. So obviously speech was our tightly scoped remit at the FSU. And that's the secret sauce as well, I would say, of the FSU. They were able to focus and drill in on this one issue, a really important issue, and an issue that underpins nearly every other right, really. But at Pillar, we've got a slightly broader view, and that's not to say that we are easily distracted or not focused, but we would say things like speech, thought, inquiry, conscience, belief, religion, and especially heading into this area of the right to privacy, which is becoming more and more controversial. So things like digital surveillance, digital ID, facial recognition technology, number plate scanning, a lot of these more modern threats to our rights, especially our right to privacy, they all sit just outside the remit of what speech allowed us to engage with before. So yeah, stepping out independently from the FSU, and I should make that pretty clear, we're independent of the FSU. Like you say, they are very effective and very successful in what they've done and what they continue to do. But yeah, having that sense of freedom and independence has really allowed me and the team to think a bit broader, address other issues, foreign interference being a major one as well, and just how we can engage them beyond that speech thread, where there is so many things we can touch on and bring to the forefront of the conversation. So yeah, we're excited to touch a broader spectrum of issues, but at the end of the day, all falling under that category of we believe civil liberties and human rights.
Yeah, and look, it won't surprise you that it's something I agree with, including that whole notion. Rights intersect one another, and I must admit, I hate using the word intersect these days. It seems to have a different meaning, but yeah, rights don't. Yeah, rights don't sit as sort of individual silos. They interconnect. Or in your case, if I could draw out your name and analogy, it's the pillars which hold up, the important structures of our society. They might be independent, but together they're working. So, I mean, in some ways, it's quite a massive area that you're moving into, and we should have a bit of a debate, actually, or a discussion. There's a better word, a discussion a little bit later around this whole age verification and digital ID, and particularly around under 16-year-olds. But I mean, in some ways, Pillar to me, or Pillar New Zealand, sounds like it could be exceptionally broad. I mean, what are some of the topics you've already sort of delved into or beginning to make comment on?
Well, you mentioned obviously the under 16 social media users ban. It's a big one. We're looking at this from two key perspectives. Parental rights, first and foremost. I don't think the state should intervene in how parents parent, but then also things like online freedom and privacy. There's huge risks here for privacy. Foreign interference is another one that we've mentioned, with the NZSAS report coming out and saying that foreign interference is definitely happening to the greatest degree in our history. Other issues around the election will come out and be more apparent. And then things like surveillance. The police are using AI-powered cameras. We don't know how many and how much they are being charged to use cameras from a private company, but looking into that issue as well. So they all are interconnected, like you say, or a pillar of democracy that we're looking at. A lot around privacy and online privacy at the moment, but also, foreign interference. And then still those classic cases of freedom of speech, freedom of thought. We're looking into a case with a teacher who's relieved of her duties for upholding her beliefs recently in Dunedin. There's just so many things on the table, which is why, people say, why did you start something new? Isn't this a saturated market? Well, the problems don't seem to be slowing down. The change isn't happening as fast as we think it could happen. So we just wanted to put more hands out there. Many hands makes light work, and really try and lift this thing to the level that we think it should be at.
It's a massively broad area, but for what it's worth, I do see a lot of these. I mean, you'll see it clearly, or more clearly than me because of the work you're leading, but there are just, an array of challenges, some that you could even describe as threats, certainly the foreign interference space. I won't go down that rabbit hole. That's one of my soapbox issues, but I would just underline what you mentioned. I mean, it is happening, and it's happening frequently. It's actually good to see our intelligence services speaking out on it. But as you say, even the challenges around expressing one's belief in society. I see supermarkets now are rolling out facial recognition, and I don't know, my sense on that one, or what the police are doing, is we as a society haven't really had a conversation about these things. It's just been foisted on us.
No, I had a conversation with someone this morning over coffee, and I said,
"Go you."
No. Well, exactly. I'm in the real world now, I said the easiest way to describe my job to someone who doesn't understand it right now is I look at things that 3 years ago were conspiracy theories and try and unpackage how they're actually happening right now. Like the whole digital ID conversation, I have to consistently step back from my computer and wonder, am I connecting red pieces of string here? Are they really filming us and watching us and scanning our face? It's this extensive reporting being done by a very small amount of journalists, especially from RNZ, and just looking at these stories and putting them in context next to each other, it's hard to deny that our privacy is being infringed on hugely by AI-powered cameras on our roads and in our big retailers. So there hasn't been a conversation, and I'll just say this, we don't have to go deep into it, but there was a request made for more information from the Court of Appeal that was shot down by both the court and the private company. So there's big questions to be answered, there's big questions to be asked. At Pillar, we're really keen to ask those questions and help lead that conversation. But yeah, I think we've taken our privacy for granted in New Zealand, we've taken our freedoms for granted in New Zealand. They're not gone by any means the stretch of the imagination, and they're hard to kill, they're hard to stamp out. We want to make sure that people, though, are being equipped with information that they can stand for their rights as well.
It's probably more of a historical comment, and it relates back to, I even mentioned the C word as in COVID times, that New Zealand sort of has inherited a tradition of rights. We've never really had to fight for them in the way that many other countries have. And so I think at times, and again, feel free to push back on this, but I think we take them a little bit for granted. Because they've just always been here in New Zealand. We've just always had freedom of speech and association and movement and so on. But actually they are being consistently challenged, and to the extent that yourself and Pillar can actually gently, not in the violent sense, but gently shake New Zealanders and say, hey, look, there are challenges. So I will ask you to go down a little bit of that rabbit hole on this AI and police, mainly because actually I don't know much about. I mean, I know discreetly what AI is and police might deploy, but what is it that you're seeing, no pun intended, and what's the problem?
So there's a company called Aura, which a decade ago was founded in conjunction with the police, and what they specialize in is AI-powered cameras. Now, the technology at the moment, to public knowledge, is being used to scan number plates, look up things like, does this car have a warrant, does it have a WAF, things like that, but also can tell where that car has been for up to 60 days. Now, it's scanning every number plate. It's not being selective. This is how they do it. They do large capture, and then they whittle it away to what they say they need, right? The issue is, though, an internal police report revealed that their system is accessible by anybody that has a police login, so 8,500 people. And when you log in to look at information, you don't have to say why you're there or what information you took. So it's different than the regular police database in that sense. You have to, if you log into the regular police database, there'll be a flag that's attached to that login. It'll show what information you access. You have to say why you've accessed it and what you took out. This database, there's no such safeguards. So an internal police report and review revealed this. Now, when the police were pushed on this, they said, yeah, we're absolutely too loose. We need to tighten our controls. A few weeks later, it came back to sort of say how they've gone and tightening the controls. They said, well, we actually haven't done anything, and we're probably actually not going to look into any of the potential misuse and abuse of the system. Now, all of this is in RNZ articles. This is not sort of hidden or conspiracy. It's just not widely known. Now, secondly to that, the same company in the report, it was referred to multiple times that they were using facial recognition technology, despite them denying that they had that capacity. Once those allegations were made, though, a few days later, they came out and said, actually, now we can do facial recognition technology, but it's not called that. It's called connect the dots. So they changed the terminology and they said, actually, we can do that. And that's what we're being seen rolled out at mainly foodstuffs retailers. I think Christchurch just announced 3 supermarkets, but the Pack and Save near my house has a big sign in the window that says, when you walk in, you'll be scanned. Now, it scans every face that walks in, and it deletes you if you're not in the system, which sounds great. There's a safety there. But it also says that there's a percentage of error where you can be mistakenly identified, and then you stay in the system, right? On the basis of how many scans are being done and the percentage that's being deleted, it still leaves a huge amount of faces in the system. And it's meaning that people are being wrongfully removed from supermarkets. It also means that their biometrics are being stored in a database that is not that secure. And if you look at things like the Discord leak, if you look at the recent Microsoft outage, we know that these systems aren't as secure as they always claim to be, especially even with Google. I think there was over 100 million login credentials leaked in the UK yesterday. So that's what we're looking at. That's what we're trying to sort of get people talking about. You're in public, sure, but should you be really open to being scanned every time you go into a store or drive your car? And should they know where you've been for the last 60 days and all your behavioral habits like this? Because it's the first step towards restricting access on the basis of things you might say online or things you might do in private that they now know publicly, right? So it sounds very Orwellian. It sounds like very conspiratorial. I still am getting to terms with understanding it and believing it myself, but it's on good authority that this is taking place.
Well, you can immediately see the giant reach of it, and actually, particularly at the start when you talked about what it can do for police and the access level, there's quite a paradox that actually it's a phenomenal amount of information and yet very few safeguards. Whereas, as you say, I've forgotten what they call the police's national intelligence software now, but it's hard to get into, rightly so, and you have to log your way in. I remember, granted not the police, Nathan, but when I used to work at the Ministry of Social Development, if I ever accessed someone's records, legitimately I might add, you always had to leave a note, and it was audited. But I hadn't appreciated the AI stuff. I sort of knew of. I didn't realize 60 days. I mean, that's phenomenal.
Well, the police have also said that it's producing way more information than they know what to do with.
Oh.
And it's funny. So I made a video about this, and then got a phone call from an unknown number, and I answered. It was a journalist from RNZ, and they said, "How do you know all of this stuff?" And I said, "Well, I've been reading what you've been writing." And they said, "Well, yeah, that's great. You're on the right track. Also, look into this, this, and this." So there is an effort happening in the media to try and bring this to light, and they were the ones who told me about the rejected request for information that the Court of Appeal put forward. The Crown and Aura both said no because of the public-private interest of the issue. But that's the question I'm asking. Why don't the police or Aura, the private company, or the Crown want it to be out there, first of all, how many cameras there are, how much police are paying for those cameras, and what those cameras' capacities are and abilities are? It seems like stuff that should be in our interest, considering they're being used on citizens. But there's been a drop in retail crime as a result, and there over 4 months, 2 cameras made over $900,000 worth of fines. So there's incentives to not be transparent around this as well. So let's be really clear. There's questions that need to be asked.
100%. And I mean, part of it too is I don't think you compromise the intelligence by sharing some of the things you just mentioned. Again, this is high-level surveillance. I mean, it's not tinfoil hat stuff, because we look at the likes of China, for example, and how its social credit system works. It's a phenomenal amount of information, and it's actually, well, again, it's great that you guys exist to be chasing up and saying, hold on a moment, we don't want all, well, maybe we do, but we don't want all the information on the system. But where's it being deployed? How often? How frequently? What are the oversights? I mean, has the Privacy Commissioner, just as a side note, been involved and engaged in any way in this space?
Yeah, he's made multiple comments. He is playing very coy. Paul Goldsmith's made comments. One of the comments that was really concerning, though, that I saw, and it was someone from the Privacy Commissioner, I believe, or either one of their legal representatives or the Commissioner, said that there's going to be trade-offs of the system, because unless they can enforce it across everyone, they won't get the full benefits. Now, a statement like that, you sort of have to take a step back and say, so you're admitting that it only works if it's all intrusive and inclusive, which sets to me the framework for them having an incentive to take it a bit further than what we would probably be comfortable with. I mean, I was already hesitant around, like you brought up COVID, having to scan into every area you went with your COVID pass. This takes that takes the opt-in option off you. Now it's not about you scanning in; it's about you being scanned as you enter. So it's a pretty crazy concept, but it's happening. And like you say, in China, it happens. Nations around the world are trying to implement it. The UK is trying to implement it. And slowly what it does, it whittles away your different rights. Your right to rent first, your right to work second, your right to purchase third. So these things can easily be restricted or revoked on the basis of whether you have all the right credentials.
Oh, absolutely. And for me too, the whole argument that some would deploy to go, well, if you've got nothing to hide, then what have you got to fear? But this is so ubiquitous, so much in every element of your life. And again, it strikes me this is a key part of what Pillar's doing, is just raising awareness so Kiwis go, oh, it's happening. And it's even happening in the private space. One of my neighbours has a what do you call it, a license plate recognising camera. I was coming up my driveway at one point, and this light kicked in, sort of faint blue light, and I was like, well, that's strange. And I recognised it and went, oh, I know exactly what this is. Now, it helps him open his gate. But, from a privacy standpoint, and I'm not picking on him, by the way, but it's clearly on. And, there's implications there because it's shared land and so on. It's just, it's everywhere now. It's amazing.
It's part of being in the modern era. But the lie is that we have to be sort of complacent about it. We can actually push back. We can actually fight for fundamental rights like privacy. But it does take being part of the conversation. We can't just sign everything away because we've been told it makes a safer environment. That's what the police said. And I believe someone in government came forward and also said that this technology is essential to creating safer communities. At Pillar, we would absolutely say that safe communities is great, but free communities, far better. So, that's sort of what we're looking at the moment in that area.
Can I say, I think that's a great distinction, actually. A free society becomes a civil society, and it actually enables a lot of, well, you don't need policing, but I'm actually struck, it's always one of my favourite quotes from a book called The Canticle for Leibowitz, and it talks about, the state rightly sought to minimize suffering and maximize security, but in seeking both, they found the opposite, which, all a little bit mysterious. But for me, what it says, and it's drawn into what we were just saying with the police, there, oh no, we need all these powers, we need to be able to do this, this, and this to keep everyone safe. But actually, in doing so, the opposite happens. We all become nervous and suspicious. I mean, so with Pillar, then you've clearly. Is there an educative side, an advocacy side? I mean, is there a legal side as well? I mean, just how big is your work in advocacy now?
Yeah, well, we're looking to grow into those spaces. We are set up with the structure prepared, slowly looking to take on a few cases in defence to individuals, especially around the foreign interference issue. That's a really big one where there's a lot of Kiwis who need our help. And I say Kiwis because they are Kiwis. They're not Chinese people or Iranian people. They're Kiwis of that descent. But they need
I see
our
you
help,
spoke out with one of my friends, Portia Mao. Portia's amazing. Great to see you backing her and supporting her.
The Portia's story is just, it's the tip of the iceberg. Chinese Kiwis in New Zealand have a right to enjoy all the freedoms afforded by our democracy. They come here, they work hard here, they've pursued freedom. It's just absolutely un-Kiwi, in my view, to let them suffer under the thumb of communism in a democratic nation. So we're absolutely looking forward to take on some legal cases there. We will continue to do, obviously, legislative work as well, with the under 16 ban being our first one, but we've got a few on the bill for next year as well. We'll do some education, we'll do community events. We're looking at bringing some speakers over from overseas. Got some really exciting names on the ballot there. And community building. This is something that we don't want to exist in just the philosophical or digital space. Mm-hmm. We want there to be communities of freedom fighters, of pillar people all across the country. So we're excited about fostering that. So we call it stand, so standing for people who need our help. Mm-hmm. Shifting legislation for a freer community and freer society. Speaking up for those who don't have a voice, and strengthening our communities. And those are the 4 areas that we focus on and work in.
So because I'd love to talk with you briefly around the whole age verification, because I think I know that your perspective of Pillar's perspective is slightly different to Family First around the under 16, and it'd be nice to tease that out a little. We can go into it deeper another time. But, I mean, what ultimately do you hope to achieve? What sort of would be an end goal with all the work that you're doing?
Yeah. I mean, it's probably it's not wise of me to make some sort of utopianistic statement, especially since I don't believe in such a thing. But our goal is that through our work, people would be re-energized, that there'd be an optimism that they find about New Zealand and about our nation and about the freedoms that we're afforded. I talk to so many people who are negative about New Zealand and negative about the country we live in. And there's a consistent theme. A lot of them haven't traveled, haven't looked outside of our borders, and have this romanticized idea of what exists out there that's better than what we have. I think that we should be extremely grateful, thankful, and optimistic about the future of New Zealand. I think what we have is one of the greatest countries in the world, if not the greatest. And I want our work to help people feel that, find that, and promote that in their communities and in their families and in their lives. So if anyone who's engaging with Pillar can walk away thinking and feeling one thing, it will be optimism. It would be optimism that's attached to freedom. It will be optimism that's attached to responsibility. Be optimism that's attached to community. We just want people who see our work to not feel like this is a doomsday message. Yes, some of the things we're talking about are really serious and should be of concern, but you should walk away feeling like, I know what I'm going to do about it. Not, what am I going to do? So hopefully everyone who sees what we're doing feels optimistic, feels empowered to make a difference, because it's people at the end of the day. It's not the system that's going to fix all of these things. It's the people engaging together democratically that we can actually start to see New Zealand be, like I believe, the greatest nation in the world. And I absolutely am never going to apologize for that. People call me crazy. I don't care. I think New Zealand's amazing, and I will say that. That's the hill I'm going to die on,
Oh, and look, good on you, and I'm with you. I think actually most New Zealanders, I think those who often get hold of the microphone in media and elsewhere, in academia, I'm going very broad here, but they knock our society down. And as someone who has travelled a lot, I've been around to many places in the world. We are very fortunate to live here, and with the rights and freedoms that we have. And I was saying to you before we came on to the show, I'm often depressed. Here's an anti-optimism dynamic, but I'm often depressed when I'm watching these short videos coming out of America as these young Americans dish on their society how terrible America is, and you're going, have you been to Iraq and Afghanistan? Have you been to Tunisia? No, actually, it's probably not fair to pick on Tunisia at the moment, but it's like, honestly, people, but anything we can do, and like Pillar's going to do to try and inculcate that optimism, I think is just brilliant.
Oh, well, we
Well,
need it, honestly. We really need an optimistic generation.
well, I'm too old and tired, so I'll leave it to the younger one. No, only kidding. So tell us, speaking of younger ones, okay,
Yes.
tell us, and you've touched on two reasons, parental rights and online freedom. So Pillar is concerned about any, as I understand, any moves to try and regulate or restrict access to social media or the internet for under 16-year-olds, which is slightly different to Family First's position. So talk me through your side.
So we're not hesitant for any moves, but we just think that there should be good solutions. We can't have solutions that make the problem worse. First and foremost, parents should be the first line of defense when it comes to what their children do online, access to devices, right? I don't think that the state should take a role in telling parents what they can and can't do, especially in something as vague as harm. Now, the issues online are real. They're realized. Some people will still debate that, but we at Pillar, no, we agree. There is harm online for children. However, the state coming in with blunt, broad bans is never going to be the answer, because what it does is it catches everyone in this practice of verifying your age. Banning under 16s doesn't make just under 16-year-olds prove that they're not 16. It makes everyone prove they're over 16. It becomes a sort of an exercise in data collection. Now, people have been out there saying they don't keep the data. How many leaks are we going to see before we stop believing this? That there's such thing as a perfectly secure system. The other thing is, the government isn't even the most effective tool or the effective body to enforce these sorts of safeguardings of online spaces. We have community groups, we have churches, we have advocacy groups that are far better equipped to deal with the case-by-case specific issues faced by certain children. It's a minority problem, and people are going to say that it's not, but 500 parents recently were surveyed. 20% of them said that their children had an unhealthy relationship. Now, 20% is a big number, but it's still a minority. We can't make majority rules for minority problems. We need to target them intentionally and bring in actual tools that will make a difference, not just put a band-aid on it, ban them. Because we've seen it with COVID, right? You overregulate, you threaten with fines, you put these restrictions on private companies, and what do? They overregulate, they over-censor. Things that are legitimate, not illegal, get removed from online. Information gets controlled, narratives get controlled. The state should have no role, and we're seeing it with state-controlled media as well. The state should have no role in changing and challenging and controlling narratives that are coming out in these spaces. So, yes, we should protect children. Children should be safe, but that should be the parents' role first and foremost. We're not saying the harm is not real. We're just saying there's better options than blunt force state bans. And I would say this to Family First and to you and Bob. I remember you guys were part of leading an amazing campaign against banning conversion therapy for the very sole purpose that it infringed on the rights of parents to lead their children in line with their evolving capacities, right? This is exactly that in a digital form. So it's not saying that we should let kids go online. We would never advocate for kids being online unsupervised. I've got children. You have stepchildren. Nick has 2 girls. Our team understands deeply what it means to look after children, protect children. We do it every day. We just don't think the government should have a say in that.
Yeah, there's some crossover between what you're saying and Family First position, because we're not very, and I suppose I'm partly speaking for myself and Family First. Bob and I are debating, discussing this at length. We certainly don't want to see actually overarching government control in this space. In fact, highly sceptical of allowing the government to be in, other than very light touch regulation, to sort of enable what we would actually see as more the private sector being able to step in and give the tools to parents. Because you're right, this should be a parental issue. Though I suppose we've been somewhat affected here by Jonathan Haidt's research and take, which is basically some parents get it. It would be my counter argument to that 20%. Some get it, a lot don't, but the harms are still there for kids. Yeah. And so parents do need tools, and I suppose the other side for us too is big tech, as we like to call it. So your Metas and your Googles and Apples do need to step up to the plate and actually take some steps rather than just dragging children in. So I suppose ultimately for us it's a child safety issue, but would want to, and you're on the same space, but we don't want heavy-handed government. I mean, one example, I was just talking earlier with someone who's very much involved in the age identification and evidence side, and was pointing out, like, for example, and I'd actually be interested in your take on this. There's a multiplicity of technologies now. One, you don't even require the internet insofar as your phone can scan your passport. You then use the video on your phone and it basically matches and said, oh, yep, that is Nathan, that is Simon. At no point does it connect to the cloud or the internet. And then because it's been, say, your passport or driver's license, it says, oh, okay, Simon is over 18. And that moment, a short bit of data is fired off to Facebook or wherever and says, yep, this guy's over 16. And, well, that's the end of the transaction. I suppose, I don't know, does technology like that, is that a way forward we could look at, or you still got concerns around privacy that could still be compromised in some way?
There's absolutely still concerns there, but what you're speaking to is and I agree with you, what are better solutions in the state, right? So absolutely at app store levels, at device levels, that's something that the Australians are exploring at the moment. And I know that some of the submitters from the likes of Meta, TikTok, and Snapchat came forward and said, these would be better options if the device creators, sellers, and carriers would put parental guide or blocks in at the device level. They currently don't. And that would be a far better place to implement parental controls as opposed to state controls. I know Meta uses a third-party app called Yoti, or a third-party platform called Yoti, which is what you've sort of described there. But what is also resounding thought and opinion amongst the experts is that state bans won't work. They don't work. There's way too many workarounds. There's black markets that pop up. You force people into less regulated, less visible spaces, especially young people. I mean, tech-savvy young people will not be kept off the internet. And then what will happen is tech giants, as you call them, will be fined $50 million in Australia, for example. So what's their incentive to not be fined $50 million? What's the way to avoid a fine then? To over-regulate. They've already said that they're going to not just look at what people register as identity or ID, they're going to look at behavior, and that should be really concerning. That's the expert from TikTok said that they're going to regulate behavior, and anyone that they deem to be behaving under the age of 25, their account will be restricted and eventually deleted. So this is the thing. We can say we'll put it in now, and this is what we always have to remember with legislation and with some of these things that we put into law. You might implement it now and it's fine, but what are you going to do if the person you don't vote for gets into power and that tool is sitting there waiting for them to brandish and use however they see fit? You have to think through things like this, because if we bring it in now and it works for us, it might not work tomorrow or next year when the election happens, right? It can be used any way you want.
I am with you. I mean, having been in Parliament, it was always one of the things in my mind of whenever we pass something, okay, as you articulately put it, Group X takes it one direction and then the next group comes in and says, oh, great. I mean, it might be a strange analogy, but I remember like the Treaty Principles Bill, controversial as it was. One of the things I was saying to people is, okay, for those who supported it, okay, great, you think ACT is putting through this law to define it. Well, once it's done, why would not the next group come in and redefine it? No, you've sort of created a very strange dynamic. But how would you apply what you've just said? And again, particularly to viewers to understand a good-natured discussion and debate. But, we do regulate access to alcohol. We fence swimming pools. We tell people not to speed on the roads. We still have drug regulations to try and protect, despite the fact we know that kids get over fences. They go and sneak alcohol. They find drugs, so on and so forth. Should we just, to put it, slightly crudely, do we just need to give up on that as well?
Well, key word there, we regulate, but do we stop?
Yeah,
I think I couldn't imagine the number of under 18-year-olds that are drinking in New Zealand right now. The car analogy is an interesting one as well. I've had it brought up multiple times, seatbelts and speed limits, they're for safety. This is not comparable at all, though. This is like getting in your car and having to tell your car where you want to go, how long you want to be there, and what you're going to do there before it even turns on. That's what this is. It's not the same as having restrictions in place. This is a barrier to entry and participation that everyone will have to participate in. Everyone's going to have to prove their identity and their age. This removes the ability for pseudonymity, anonymity, things that are protected, vulnerable speakers online. So it's not exactly the same as regulating and creating a safer environment. What it does is it create effectively a surveillance environment. So yeah, if you can find me, a good example where drinking ceased for under 18s when 18-year-old bands come in, maybe you win me over. But I just, from personal experience, I definitely was not waiting until I was 18.
Just need to remind you this is a live podcast. No.
Hypothetically, allegedly.
Yeah, one of the ones that's captured my attention, I suppose for me it's twofold. One is just what does seem to be sort of comprehensive harm to children. Look, I'm with you. I'm the first person to get upset and worried about the word harm because it gets stretched and twisted again, and putting my cards on the table. I think family first, again, it's Jonathan Haidt's research, which basically, and I suppose one of his conclusions, Nathan, is that we need a collective response, which is why even as someone who leans heavily into parental rights, to go, well, if parent X is doing something and parent Y isn't, actually the children are still going to be impacted and infected without a collective response, which might sound strange coming from a former centre-right politician. But it's those area of the app stores which has particularly caught my attention, because twofold it seems. One, pretty much we access all apps through only two stores, Google and Apple's, and needing an age affirmation there could work. But the real kicker is consent, that the parents need to give consent. Because one thing that strikes me, I don't know about you, when I sign up for an app and I get pages and pages of 8-point font of conditions, I just go to the bottom and click agree. I suppose young people can't consent to these things, and so the sort of approach that I think like Utah, Texas and others are taking sort of keeps the parent in the loop. I mean, is there something that we should explore there from your perspective?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, you're right. There's a monopoly there with Apple and Google, and they do need to implement better controls for parents. I have explored the Apple parental controls with a dummy account that I made for my 6-year-old. Not that he has a device or a phone or anything that he could use it on, but I just wanted to see what the controls were, and they could be improved a lot more. I just keep coming back to the thought though that bringing in state enforcement to replace parental rights, parental responsibility and oversight is just never going to work. So no, Apple and Google, this is exactly what they're talking about in Australia. Apple and Google need to do a better job at the device and app store level. And that's what every privacy expert that I've seen speak publicly on the issue has said. And I also just want to say, you mentioned Jonathan Haidt a few times, and I think he's done fantastic work in the space. He doesn't view it as so much of an addiction to social media, but a social participation thing, right? He said, If you can get a third of kids off, you're likely to get the whole group off. They just want to be there because their friends are there. And he says, in an ideal world, the state would come in and they would achieve this. But he also acknowledges that the state is not the right actor to do so. So I want to encourage people who love Jonathan Haidt. I'm in your team. I'm Team Jonathan. It'll be great to get into New Zealand to do a talk about this. But even he's realistic about the limitations that having the state enforce these things bring, and the threats that it brings. So we can't just say, well, Jonathan Haidt said this, and this. His research is amazing. He showed that there's an argument there, but his solution isn't one dimension either.
No, agreed. And I have to say, I'm probably more aligned to what you're saying, is that I don't want to see big government here at all, or overly heavy government regulation. I suspect there will need to be some. I suppose where the tipping point comes for me, because I can understand a lot of the debate and argument, like you can. I suppose for us at Family First, that child safe, the need to actually safeguard, for want of a better term, in the way we perceive it, because no one here is saying we shouldn't safeguard children, but it sort of tips a bit of the balance to go, okay, we actually need to tool up parents. But I suppose for me it's very light government regulation, which puts a little bit of pressure on these big tech companies to do something primarily through that private sector and to limit how much tech, but understand the tensions there too. We should come back to this another day, because literally we could do a full podcast on this, but I thought it would be just good to tease out a few ideas.
I will say, if I could add one thing.
Go for it.
The bill is out there. It's only 7 pages. We're gonna release a sort of a deep dive on it soon. The bill in its opening statements talks about encouraging education, encouraging resources that educate parents, and then later on suggests zero such thing, or points in the direction of any education. So more than anything, this is lazy legislation. So we just have to be really cautious of that as well. This is virtuous. We're trying to follow other countries. The work hasn't been done. We've been trying to talk to the minister now for over a month. She's cancelled 2 meetings with us. So we're looking forward to talking to her soon, hopefully, and we'll get some answers.
Yeah, look, for what it's worth, while I'm pleased the bill's been drawn out, I'm only pleased because it's enabling more conversation, or it should do. I actually think the bill is exceptionally light. In some ways, to me, it's a classic members bill. It just sort of flags an issue. It was like years ago, and look, there's multiple members bill, but I remember one was when I was chairing the health committee around organ donation, and look, the idea in the bill was great, but we took well under was it about 9 months to a year, basically doing all the heavy lifting and drafting, because it really was just a couple of pages of nice statements. And I think, unfortunately, Catherine's social media one's exactly the same. It's somewhat modelled, as you know, on Australia, but it's very light in detail. And if it passed, it would be a mess, to be honest. Yeah. But to the extent it starts a conversation, although I do feel sorry for the the MPs on the select committee, because they'll have to do all the heavy lifting and they'll get absolutely no credit for it whatsoever.
No, exactly.
And actually, the other thing, and I don't mind saying this while we're still on the podcast, we've actually struggled to engage with her or the minister. So Erica Stanford's been meaning to look into this issue, and we've had we had Jonathan Haidt last year at our Forum on the Family, granted via Zoom, but he spoke with us. We had Dawn Hawkins here recently, another expert. There's a whole number of other contacts we have and have been offering them. Actually, Family First has been saying to the government, to the MPs, we can have these people talk to you. We don't even need to be there. They just don't seem to be wanting to listen. And I don't know about you, that's a big red flag for me in this space in particular.
Oh, absolutely. And if I could just quickly say, I went to the Forum on the Family this year. It was incredible. If you haven't gone before, you should go next year. Family First, you guys do an incredible job. I sat there during no, seriously, you know, it's so funny. I sat there during the intro of the conference, and there's a highlight reel of everything that Family First has done for New Zealand over the last 2 decades. And I thought, why am I even starting a new organization? You're already doing it all. But then I thought, no, I'm encouraged. I want to be even a fraction as successful as what you guys are. So good on you. Like, I think, like you say, we are aligned on the core fundamental principle of, and this is what I'd say across all advocacy groups, we all want to protect children. There's no disagreement there. But the solution is really, really important. We need to make sure we get the solution right. So that's where I'd say we're a bit of an outlier. And I've gotten some cold looks. I've gotten some cold shoulders from different people in the space. I'm a big boy. I'm happy to handle it. But I just want people to know, at Pillar, yes, we believe in protecting children. The solution is really important, though, because if we don't do this well now, it's only going to come back and get us in the future.
Yeah, and arguably it will not help the children, and it'll have repercussions into the adult space. But this, again, is why I think actually it's in my mind, it's good having multiple groups. So you've obviously Family First, Bob's been around like 20 years, Pillars just started, we've had likes of Ethos Alliance and others. There's no shortage. I actually myself think it's better to have multiple groups and point of disagreement, because actually as we discuss and debate, I mean obviously we're here on a podcast, but we'll be discussing a lot offline. Hopefully it'll hone our thinking. So if people don't want to get hold of Pillar, they want to check out your work, your young guys, your media savvy. So what are your websites and Facebook? Where can people find you?
Yeah, so we're on every social platform. Our handle is @pillar_NZ. And we have a website, nzpillar.com. Sign up to our mailing list. We send out updates every week. We send out information every week. We're hosting a petition at the moment for under 16 ban, so make sure you sign that. But if you want to engage with us, probably the best place is social media, @pillar_NZ. So we'll see you there. If you write us a comment, we'll write back. I'll make Arian write back, and it'll be a good time.
Well, I have to say, I've only just signed up to your newsletter, so I encourage people to do that. But also, I am loving your social media game already. I know you guys have started your own podcast. So look, Nathan, I'm incredibly excited that Pillar New Zealand is up and running. I just love the breadth of your work. And look, a big, big thank you for taking the time to come and talk with me and all the viewers today.
Oh, thanks for having me, and thanks to all the viewers.